Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we're going to be talking about how to use a Harlequin troupe in 10th edition and if it's worth it, if Harlequins are actually worth taking, because last edition they were pretty much an auto-include in most competitive lists by the end of 9th edition. However, things have changed and Harlequins are probably not as desirable as they were before. So the question becomes, are Harlequins still worth taking in my list? Should I still take a troupe in my list, or should I just use other aspect warriors? And what's the difference between using other aspect warriors and using Harlequins? And the thing is, even though they don't have as much raw power as they used to, they still hit harder than most aspect warrior units when you account for the synergies and buffs that you can give them. So without further ado, let us go ahead and dive right into it and talk about using a Harlequin troupe in 10th edition. But first, a quick overview of what we're going to be looking at in today's video. We're going to be reviewing their stats, weapons, and special rules, their strengths and weaknesses, their combos and synergies, and lastly, the role of troops in an Eldar army and how to make the most out of them. So first, looking at their stats, they have movement 8, which is the standard for Harlequin units, and they have a 4+ invulnerable save, and of course a trash armor save of a 6+. And that's basically it. Objective control 1, which is a little bit of a shame. I would have thought that because there were troops last edition, or, battle line, if you take a troop master this edition, they would at least get an extra objective control, but unfortunately that's not the case. As far as their melee weapons go, they do come with the Harlequin's Blade standard, which is absolute garbage. It's just basically more attacks, but at a lower strength and 0 AP. Luckily, all of them can take the Harlequin special weapon for no extra cost, which is much better at strength 4, AP -1. Now, the only problem is that, these used to be damage 2 and these are damage 1, and this is where a lot of the damage got lost in the transition from 9th edition to 10th edition. But the Harlequins also did get their costs reduced considerably, especially considering they can take all their weapon options for free. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, the lead player can take a power sword now, which is objectively better than the Harlequin special weapons. So last edition, the Harlequin special weapons, a kiss, caress, and embrace, were just better than the power sword. Now it's the opposite. The power sword has 1 more attack, 1 additional AP, and there's no reason not to take it on the lead player. As far as their ranged weapons go, they do have several options of pistols. They can take fusion pistols and neuro disruptors, which are pistol upgrades you do want to take because they're free. And again, they're better than the shuriken pistol, so you might as well take them, right? Even though they are downgrades from last edition. The fusion pistol only having D3 damage versus D6 is much worse, obviously. And the neuro disruptor not doing mortal wounds is, again, much worse. But they are still better than the shuriken pistol. As far as their abilities go, when they charge, they get +1 to wound, which is a strong damage buff and allows them to hit harder versus pretty much any target. This means that if you have a Harlequin unit, you don't necessarily have to doom something to be hitting hard against that target. So against toughness 3, they'll wound on 2s. Against toughness 4, they'll wound on 3s. And this is not even accounting for the other buffs that they can get, like devastating wounds and wound rerolls. As far as their war gear options go, they can basically take 2 fusion pistols and 2 neuro disruptors in units of 10 or less. If you want to go that extra mile and take a big unit of 11 or 12, they can take 4 of each. So they can take 4 fusion pistols, 4 neuro disruptors. Now, 4 fusion pistols, when in range, do hit pretty hard against heavy infantry. They just do, right? Yes, they're only range 6, but if you do get the range, they can hit pretty hard. And if you manage to get within 3 inches for that melter rule to proc, they hit even harder. So if they're really close to a target, they can hit it pretty hard. Even really heavy infantry, like Terminators. As for their unit composition, they cost 75 points for 5 models, which is 15 points per model, so pretty cheap. And that's kind of what you have to consider, right? These are the same price as Striking Scorpions, so you kind of have to compare them with Striking Scorpions to see what you want to get out of the unit when taking a melee unit. You're not going to have that many melee units typically in your craft-rolled Eldar army. So when deciding which one is right for you, that's one of the choices you have to make. And you probably do need at least 1 or maybe 2 melee units in your army for different tasks that your range units are not going to be able to complete. So you have a bunch of options here. You can take a unit of 5, 6, a unit of 6 to 10, or a unit of 12. And basically everything in between. So at that specific points cost. So just remember, you might as well take the biggest unit possible at that points level. So if you want to take a unit of 11, you're going to take, the lead player and 10 players, right? I mean, you're not going to take anything less than that and pay that price. So you're not going to take like something like 7 players and 1 lead player, because you're going to be, cheating yourself on the amount of points you can bring to the table. So make sure you do follow these. I know it's kind of convoluted and it seems weird, which it is. I wish GW would go back to the modular system of, points per model, and you could just take whatever you want in between, which I think they are going to go back to when the codexes come out, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, this means that Harlequins are pretty cost effective, right? 15 points a model isn't a high price to pay considering all the weapon upgrades and stuff like that you can give them. And lastly, for their keywords, they have the infantry and grenades keywords, which are both useful on this unit. I've used the grenades keyword several times on this unit to do basically 3 mortal wounds on average. It's not bad for a command point. If you need something dead that's close to dying, but you're not sure if the Harlequin unit can fully take it out, use the grenade stratagem before charging in and then basically guarantee the kill, right? You do want to make sure that whenever you charge these guys into something, that they end up killing that target. So the grenade stratagem is useful for that. As far as their strengths and weaknesses go, they are very fast. Movement 8 is a good profile for speed. They're hard hitting, especially with support. They're slightly more durable than other Eldar infantry units, but not by much. Don't over-rely on their 4+ invul save. It is good, but it's not spectacular. So you do still need to watch out for shooting. And they can take multiple fusion pistols and neurodisruptors throughout the unit, which are very good pistol upgrades and help the unit hit a lot harder. Overwatch is also something they have to watch out for and is one of their main weaknesses. So the thing with Overwatch is that most smaller enemy units aren't going to be able to Overwatch effectively. What you have to watch out for is flamers, right? Anything that auto hits, that has the torrent ability, or things that just have a lot of rerolls and stuff like that. Or things with hit modifiers that, Overwatch on a better ballistic skill. So Overwatching on even a 5+ can spell doom for this unit. They also have low damage output when unsupported. So if you just take 5 of them and expect them to do the same thing they did last edition when you took 5 of them, you're fooling yourself. They're not going to do the same thing that 5 Harlequins did last edition. They do need to be supported by characters or by buffs to be effective at damage. Okay, so speaking of the buffs that you can give Harlequin troops, what are their combos and synergies? So Troop Masters give them devastating wounds, which increases their damage considerably. And it's one of the best ways to increase the unit's damage. Again, you could deal mortal wounds with this unit last edition for command points, but now the Troop Master just gives it to them joining the unit. So that is a pretty cost-effective way to give them some extra damage. And the Troop Master himself, while not the greatest in close combat, is still decent, has a lot of attacks and so forth. Falcons can also give them rerolls to wound and give them a 3-inch extra threat range when accounting for the disembark distance, which is important. Remember that this unit doesn't have a whole lot of threat range, so any extra little bit of threat range that you can get while also maintaining their high damage is very important. And especially with a Troop Master, 5 of these jumping out of a Falcon with a Troop Master, rerolling all their wounds, getting devastating wounds, can be extremely powerful against the right targets. Will it destroy an entire Death Star by itself? Absolutely not, of course. But it is still pretty strong and will do considerable damage. Yvraine also gives the unit a 5+ feel no pain and resurrects D3 models in your command phase. That's actually extremely powerful, and it makes the unit very good at surviving against attacks that would normally kill them. So it does make them quite a bit more survivable, and because of that, because they're one of the most survivable and durable units that Yvraine can join, and actually just straight up, they are the most durable unit that you can join, and as such, her Feel No Pain will work the best on the Harlequins. And again, she resurrects D3 models a turn, which is awesome as well. The Visarch can also give them fights first. This is great in combination with Yvraine because both Yvraine and the Visarch can be taken together. It's very useful on a durable unit as well that can fight in multiple phases and not be killed right away. Guide can make them more accurate if you can use it. And again, you might be in a transport, so it might be hard to do this. But if you're out on the battlefield, you can definitely use Guide and boost the damage considerably. They do have a lot of attacks, which means Guide will have a big impact. The Shadow Seer can give them stealth as well as advance in charge, but as stated in one of my previous videos, this is by far worse than the other options. Again, it's not like you can just attach a Shadow Seer in addition to the other models. You basically have to choose because it has the leader rule. So it's not like a Warlock. If it was like a Warlock, I would be easier on the Shadow Seer, but because you have to take it in place of a Troupe Master or Yvraine, it's just kind of hard to make use of the Shadow Seer in that way. Also, if you have a Star Weaver, the Troupe can hop back in the Star Weaver after killing a unit in combat, which is still a pretty good thing. I mean, you're losing out on the rerolls from a Falcon, but you do gain the ability to be more safe after combat. So it just depends really what you want to do and what units you plan to go after. Okay, so then the question becomes, when should you consider taking Troupes in your list? So if you are taking Yvraine and using a Ynnari army, they're pretty much an auto-include. Again, using these guys as a bodyguard for Yvraine is extremely powerful, and it's probably one of the best ways to use them. They're very tough with her, they do hit extremely hard, and they give her a good base in which to do her own damage, which she does considerable damage by herself. They're also really useful if you need a hard-hitting melee unit against infantry. So when coming out of a Falcon, they can still do very solid damage. They get +1 to wound when they charge, they're getting rerolls to wound. If you have a Troupe Master, they're getting devastating wounds on top of that. So if you're looking for something hard-hitting to defend the midboard or go after units that are encroaching on your positions, or you just need a unit that can get into hard-to-reach places while still maintaining good damage, then this is your unit. They hit harder than Howling Banshees with a Troupe Master, and Striking Scorpions as well. So Striking Scorpions are good, don't get me wrong. You can definitely have them in a Falcon sitting in the back, coming out, re-rolling their devastating wounds and stuff. But I just think they're better used as an infiltrator or something to throw in reserve to, put some extra pressure on your opponent. And I suppose you can use these guys in the same way and put them in reserve, but because they hit so much harder, I feel like coming out of a Falcon can be a better option for them. They can also do great damage coming out of a Wave Serpent if you use a max unit, although if you do this, I suggest taking Yvraine with this build and just going all in on it. So if you are going to take a full unit of 10, just go all in, throw Yvraine in there, throw the Vizark in there, and just make a very big Death Star. Because this unit will hit extremely hard and it will be able to soak up Overwatch much better with that Feel No Pain, and also the fact that Yvraine resurrects models doesn't hurt. Okay, so in conclusion, even though Troupes are not hitting as hard as they once were last edition, they are now cheaper, and they still hit hard for their cost with the right buffs. They can be given things like devastating wounds and rerolls to wound, and those things are very powerful with a cheaper unit that doesn't cost a lot. Again, only costing 75 points base isn't a huge investment for what you can get if you run them correctly. They're especially good with Yvraine, who can make them really quite survivable, and at the same time contribute her own considerable damage. And I just have to state this again, because this is such a powerful combination. Using Harlequins with Yvraine, even if you're not running a Ynnari list, even if you're just running a regular Craftworld Eldar list, and Yvraine is not your warlord, it is still probably worth considering putting her in a unit of Harlequins. Because she just gives them so much extra durability, and at the same time, she gives them a lot of damage. Now, she is a considerable point sink. She is 100 points, so that's something you have to consider, which is why it's probably better to put her with a bigger unit of Harlequins as a bigger bodyguard so that she can, have more Feel No Pain opportunities and also just simply have more, chances to resurrect models. But she is quite powerful, and you should consider using Yvraine if you're going to use Harlequins. Now, if you're going for something a little bit cheaper, you don't want to put that much investment into them, then they are a good cleanup unit with a Troupe Master, and they are a good unit for just dislodging, enemy infantry units from tough positions that maybe your shooting units can't get to, behind some line of sight blocking ruins, for example. And with the Troupe Master, even though, again, they're a little bit more expensive than Howling Banshees, they are going to do considerably more damage than Howling Banshees are. They're getting +1 to wound when they charge in, they're getting rerolls to wound with the Falcon, and they're getting devastating wounds. And the Howling Banshees, despite their, high AP, are just not going to be able to deal the same amount of damage. And at this point, having played an all Harlequin list for quite a few games now, I can comfortably say that even when they're not disembarking from a Falcon, 5 Troupes with a Troupe Master attached will murder a unit of 5 Intercessors pretty easily. So you do have to fire the pistols first, though. So keep in mind, you do have to also account for the fusion pistols and neurodisruptors, but between their shooting and close combat, they can easily wipe out a unit of 5 Space Marines, which isn't exactly their points cost. I know they cost about 125 points for that setup, and a unit of Space Marines costs significantly less than that. But again, if you need something off a certain place in the board, it's irrelevant what they cost, right? So if there's something sticking on an objective that nothing can shoot at, and your only option is to remove them with the Harlequin Troupe, well, even though you didn't trade up, your troop was still able to perform something in the game that was needed, right? So just like Guardian Defenders, right? Guardian Defenders never kill their points worth almost, but they defend objectives, they generate fate dice. Over the course of the game, if they do survive, they are going to make up their points just from sitting on that objective. Same thing with Rangers and other units like that. Yeah, they'll never really make up their points worth in damage, but they make up their points worth in other ways, and Harlequin troops are able to apply their damage in very specific ways to deal with specific targets on the battlefield that, your shooting units can't reach. So with that, I will go ahead and end today's video. Do consider picking up Troupes. They are pretty effective shock infantry. I've had better success using these guys out of a Falcon than I have Howling Banshees, so that is something to consider when choosing your army's hard-hitting melee unit. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you to all my patrons and supporters who have supported me over the last months. Your help has been greatly appreciated. If you do want to support the channel on Patreon, I have free trials set up, and that gives you permanent access to our Discord community, which is a community of Eldar players that like talking about strategy, tactics, and of course hobbying with other Eldar enthusiasts. I also have a channel store page if you want to support the channel that way by grabbing some Eldar inspired apparel. Helps the channel out a little bit, and you get to rep your favorite faction at your local game store. I will leave the links to both the Patreon and the channel store in the description for you guys to find those as well. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for today. Thanks for watching. Peace out. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one, everybody. See you later.